Hello everybody, how are we all doing? Do you know what the number one reason as to why many people stay stuck with guilt and shame and severe OCD relating to the past, so real event, false memory OCD, anything to do with the past, is this? I hear it all the time. This constant talk back to OCD saying this: I didn't do anything wrong. I promise you, OCD, I have done nothing wrong. It won't work. I spent years and years and years saying that to OCD, constantly responding to its accusations with, I've done nothing wrong. I'm not a bad person. I'm the last person to have done that. I have done absolutely nothing wrong. Leave me alone. Stop bothering me. Go away. Let me live my life. I've done nothing wrong. Now, let me be very, very clear here. You are never, ever, ever going to be able to work out, figure out whether you've done something wrong. You won't be able to. And you can keep telling me that, yeah, but Sam, I know that I've done nothing wrong. But that isn't the point. That's besides the point. The point is that when you're an OCD sufferer, it does not matter what you have done or what you haven't done. It doesn't matter, because you have a disorder that is looking to accuse you with 0.0000001% evidence. That's all it needs. Boom. There was a tiny chance that you've done wrong. Boom. Plus, it can make things up. OCD can twist things. It can manipulate events from the past so it feels convincingly and utterly real. Okay, so turning round and responding to its accusation with, I've done nothing wrong. I promise you, OCD, I've done nothing wrong. It falls on deaf ears. It won't work. Waste of time. Zero return investment, and it keeps the cycle brewing. It keeps it pumping away. Okay? The only approach that I found effective with the locked on guilt and shame, and I'm going to say this very clearly and very thoroughly because you need to hear this. The only approach that worked in an effective way to get me over real event, false memory, guilt and shame, anything in the past related, was unconditional self-acceptance. That was the only way. Because if I kept telling myself or telling OCD or just kept repeating that I've done nothing wrong, it wouldn't budge. It wasn't moving. It's a stubborn, I was going to swear then, but I'm trying to cut my swearing out. It's a very stubborn disorder. It's relentless. It doesn't just back down because you've said you've done nothing wrong, right? Remember, it's not a case of whether you have or haven't done something wrong. That's irrelevant. OCD doesn't care about that. It doesn't work. And this is where it's cruel, because people will say, yeah, but Sam, I know I've done nothing wrong. I've checked the CCTV footage. My friends have told me I've done nothing wrong. My dad was there. He told me I've done nothing wrong. I asked my wife, asked my husband. They told me they've done nothing wrong. They told me that I've done nothing wrong. And I've gone over it again in my head, and I've done nothing wrong. But why do I still feel guilty and ashamed? Well, because OCD just needs that one tiny seed of doubt. And that's all it needs to thrive. That's all it needs to flourish and lock on. And it won't move. It won't budge. It's a stubborn old thing. And the only way you're going to get it to budge is by saying this. Okay then, OCD. Don't talk back in the moment, but I'm just using it as for video's sake. Okay then, OCD. Even if it was real, even if I have done wrong, even if, people love it when I say that, even if, okay then, OCD, even if I have done what you have accused me of, how can I learn to accept myself in an unconditional manner? How can I learn to be at peace with myself, even if that thing was true? Even if that thing actually happened? And don't at this point say, oh no, but I know it didn't happen because of this. Forget it. Forget it. You will never, ever, ever get relief that way. And I've had to say to people, and I don't like saying this, I've had to say to people, it kills me to say this, but you will be stuck forever with that if you keep telling yourself you've done nothing wrong. OCD ain't listening. It don't give a crap. It doesn't give a toss about, I ain't done nothing wrong, I'm the last person to do that. It don't care. It don't care. And I got to a stage where I kept saying, oh, but I've done nothing wrong. I wasn't even getting relief. I wasn't even getting relief from the compulsion of talking back, saying I've done nothing wrong. It wasn't working. So even the reassurance, even the self-reassurance statements was becoming meaningless, wasteful. Okay? So the only approach is, even if you have, how could you learn to be at peace with yourself and learn to let yourself off the hook? Because the stubborn belief that I always hear is that, Sam, if that was true, my life is over, I'm the worst person ever, I'm undeserving of any happiness or joy, life's done, I can't be let off the hook, right? So you've got to tackle that belief and untangle that bit by bit by bit, and seeing how that is so irrational and how that is self-created and how you are deciding to cling on to that exact belief there, that I am undeserving of any happiness if that were true. Even if you did something wrong and there were repercussions, would that still make you a worthless person? Would that still make you an awful, terrible person? Or are you just somebody that may have acted wrongly on that occasion, who can learn from that and learn from their mistake and try to correct their behaviour in the future? Or are you one of the individuals that should be punished forever? Well, if you're saying that, I wish you the best of luck emotionally, because you're going to be in lots of trouble with your emotional well-being. Going to be in lots of trouble. So we're going to have to look at how we can adjust our thinking and see how any form of guilt and shame is self-created. Always remember that. It's self-inflicted guilt and shame. You can be guilty of something. Of course, you're a human being. You can do wrong. You are capable of doing wrong. Not saying you want to. Of course you don't want to do wrong. Certainly not encouraging wrong behaviour. Definitely not. You want to act well. You want to act morally. You want to act aligned to your values and your morals. You want to be a law-abiding citizen. Of course you do. But your fallibility, your imperfections, and plus all the moving parts behind why people do what they do, put yourself in a situation where you're angry, put yourself in a situation where maybe you are not quite thinking straight. Anger's the number one, right? All the genetic factors, all the environmental factors, how the brain's operating, all these different moving parts you put in a blender and mix them all together, out could possibly come wrong behavior, a mistake that you make, immoral behavior, right? That's not justifying it, it's just the reality. You're a human being that's capable of doing wrong, right? You don't want to. Yes, of course you don't. I don't want to do wrong, but I'm a human being and I can make a mistake, right? So I'm fully aware of that. So when you look at things in the past and you say things like, no, if I've done wrong, I'm the worst person ever, I can't be let off the hook, I deserve a lifetime of misery. When you say things like that, there's no wonder you're going to feel guilty forever. So we've got to try and look at this thing, either in the past, or look at yourself, or look at them both, via the lens of compassion. Through the lens of compassion, unconditional self-acceptance, understanding, forgiveness. It's not agreement. You can strongly condemn bad behaviour. Acceptance isn't agreement. Always remember that. You're not justifying poor behaviour. You're not excusing immoral behaviour. You could deeply regret something you've done. You could be strongly opposed to an action in the past. Of course you could. I encourage that. If you've done wrong, you want that regret. You want that healthy dose of remorsefulness so you don't then repeat poor behaviour. But it's so unproductive to then call yourself an awful person that deserves total misery for the rest of your life, and then you spend the rest of your life in misery. The rest of your existence will be pretty sad. You're not going to be happy, put it that way, right? And that ain't easy to do, because what society will tend to do And how it's tend to taught with cancel culture and so on is do wrong, down immediately, rest of your life written off. That ain't productive. That ain't healthy. That isn't efficient to how you want to live your life. Okay? Plus, you're a human being that could do wrong. So, turning around and saying to OCD, I've done nothing wrong, that ain't gonna work. You've got to approach it as, okay then, I'm a fallible human, and let's say, for rational sake, let's say I have done wrong. Now, how could I learn to accept myself as a fallible human being through the lens of unconditional self-acceptance? How could I have compassion for myself even if I've done wrong, or done this thing that I'm not proud of, or done this regrettable act? How could I learn to accept myself? Not right now, but how could I work towards unconditional self-acceptance? That is the approach that you're going to need. Otherwise, you're going to remain in this tug of war with OCD. Tug of war. You're going to keep shouting at the top of your voice, I've done nothing wrong. OCD is going to go, nope, yes you have. And you keep saying, no, but my intention wasn't anything wrong. Okay, even if the wrong thing happened, that wasn't what I didn't deliberately do wrong. It wasn't an intention. Don't care. You knew, you took the risk, you did wrong. That's what OCD is going to be doing. It's going to be constant accusations again and again and again. A lot of my journey wasn't even the replaying this one thing from the past. It wasn't just that. A lot of it was just that auto-suggestion of, you've done wrong. You've done wrong. You've done wrong. You've done wrong. You've done wrong, right? Just on a loop, right? And the guilt was immensely high. And everything that I did was soured because of the guilt and shame. It was like a burden weighing me down. No matter what I did, get back down to the ground, firmly bolted down to the ground. You can't live your life, Sam, because you've done this thing in the past. Okay? But I kept combating it with, I've done nothing wrong. And OCD says, you've done wrong. See that tug of war? And then all that's going to happen is I let go of the rope and I'm going to go flying into the ground. Right? And that's what was happening for years. That was exactly what was happening, right? In this battle, in this friction with OCD. It wasn't going to work. Okay? So, yet again, the only way forward here is by wearing the guilt and shame, allowing it to be there, surrendering to all the feelings of discomfort, guilt, shame, panic, anxiety. Let it pump away, pump. Let it be there, run through your veins, okay? Let that happen. But you've got to take a philosophical approach. You've got to take a change in your perspectives here and your beliefs, because you've got to think, right, okay, saying I've done nothing wrong, keep shouting out to the world that I'm not a bad person, that ain't working. You'll spend a lifetime doing that. OCD don't give a fuck. And the universe, I swore, I'm sorry. I'm trying to actually swear less. OCD doesn't care. The universe isn't listening. It ain't gonna work. Forget it. The only thing that's gonna work is by taking a change in how you view yourself with an unconditional self-acceptance whilst trying to correct poor behavior. Like if you did wrong, you'd want to learn from that. You're not becoming delusional where you're saying, I can do wrong, who cares? I can act carelessly, who gives a shit? I swore again. I can act recklessly, I don't care, right? You're not trying to say that at all. That is not the approach. That's the total misunderstood approach to how we're viewing guilt and shame and real event and false memory. And what's different about how we approach it is that we get under it because we actually tackle the source of the problem and think, well, what's causing the guilt and shame? What's causing it? We're not going to just say, I'm sure you wouldn't have done anything wrong. You're not a bad person. No, don't be silly. Whilst that is nice to hear, whilst that's all lovely, lovey-dovey, wishy-washy, it's nonsense, it's crap, because it ain't going to solve anything, right? It ain't going to get you anywhere. It's going to keep you stuck. I'd even say this to people without OCD. If somebody came to me without OCD, which they can do, it's not all just OCD, by the way. We can deal with people that are just disturbed or dealing with lots of guilt and shame and anxiety. It's very, very common because the tools that we're teaching and the tools that we've learned from Albert Ellis and so on are for life, not just for OCD. They're for life, right? OCD obviously exasperates the symptoms and OCD amplifies the suffering, and it latches to anything with real event false memory, anything you could have done wrong, of course. That's the OCD mechanism. But people without OCD aren't just guilt-free all the time. The people with Out OCD can often feel very down as well, with guilt and shame and anxiety and so on, right? So it's still the same principles. It's still the same approach of, well, it's going to be hard to get under this, but you're going to have to go towards unconditional acceptance. You're going to have to go towards forgiveness, compassion, learning to let yourself off the hook. There's no other way. Otherwise, it's going to be a lifetime of locked on self-punishment, self-hatred, self-lambastment. It's just going to be just constantly neglecting oneself. And I've been in that cycle for years. And it does upset me when I think how neglective I was of myself. Didn't give a shit about my weight, didn't give a shit about my future, didn't give a shit about my career, didn't give a shit about my life. And that was just because I was just in this undeserving pit of just self-hatred, self-torture, shall I say. It was just, I didn't care because it was so locked on with the, well, even if, it was so locked on with the, if you've done this, then what's the point? Your life's over. That's so irrational. That's so crooked, that way of thinking, because that means that you're written off after one act. That means that there's no future for you as a human being if you've done wrong. And I used to believe that, which is absurd, right? And then OCD latched, and it was like, well, that's it. And it just wouldn't budge on this one thing. Then it was moving, then it was switching, then it was chopping and changing, it was adjusting. Oh, it was just having a field day. OCD was making mincemeat of me because I had the belief that if I've done something wrong, I can't move forward, I can't overcome. Whereas in reality, if I did do wrong, I could learn to accept myself unconditionally, which I have now. I have unconditional self-acceptance because I've taught that. I've learned that, and I've been guided that way, with Rob and the help of all the coaches and all the content, all the books, Ellis and so on. I've been guided that way. Okay, so I can see how that was really beneficial for me, and that's allowed OCD to unlatch, because it was only latching to things that I couldn't accept myself for, if that were true, and it was accusing me, you've done wrong, you've done wrong, you've done wrong. Okay, so the only way of getting that to unlatch and to stop OCD pointing the finger with you've done wrong, was saying, okay, then even if I have, I could accept myself. I'm not going to fight with you, I'm not going to fight with you, OCD, even if I have, I could learn to be at peace with myself. Of course I could. I could learn to accept myself as a fallible human being. It's possible of doing wrong. I could rebuild my life. I could overcome, even if there were consequences, even if there were repercussions of poor behavior. I could see how I could overcome that with time and learn to accept myself and have compassion, move on and fulfill my life's goals. I might have to adjust life's goals, but I can still aim to succeed in life and still aim to be happy and maximize my pleasure and enjoyment and satisfaction and aid my survival for as long as I can, via longevity and whatever, right? I don't see the point of lambasting yourself to not wanting to be here anymore. I don't see the purpose in that. How is that productive in any way? Not at all. I don't see the point of constantly berating yourself that your life's totally miserable. I don't see the point of constantly hating yourself that you have to turn to some kind of drug or alcohol to get rid of that feeling. That isn't productive. That's not going to get you anywhere. Understandable. I've been there. I've been there myself, but it's not how I wanted to live. I wanted to go towards unconditional self-acceptance. No matter what OCD was accusing me of in the past, no matter what I've done in the past, whether it's OCD or not, doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me anymore. It doesn't matter to me at all. I don't ever cling on to the fact, oh, it's just my OCD. Never. I had to forget that, because OCD would convince me with the realness that this one isn't OCD. So I had to approach it, well, even if this one was real, even if the one was different, even if this one was the exception, how could I still learn to accept myself no matter what? And that is key to your recovery from chronic guilt and shame. I hope you're still watching this video, because it's been quite in-depth and detailed, and I've covered a lot of points, and that is how you're going to get under it. Okay? If you are interested in one-to-one calls and you're really stuck with guilt and shame and all kinds of OCD themes, but guilt and shame is something that I was stuck with for many, many years, you're not alone. There's so much hope. You can feel so trapped. You can feel lost in a tunnel with no way out. You can feel trapped in an inescapable maze. All kinds of ways I like describing it, because that's what it was like. I couldn't see a way out. There was no light end of the tunnel for years, because I kept telling myself, done nothing wrong, done nothing wrong. And OCD kept saying, yes, you have, yes, you have, yes, you have. Waste of time. Back and forth, going nowhere. I was going nowhere. Until I took a more rational approach with the help of Rob and Albert Ellis and all the other books on the reading list and all the different philosophers that you can pick up along the way. And then I started to learn to accept myself unconditionally, and then that led to freedom. Mental freedom, no longer trapped. If you're interested in one-to-one calls, please email phil@ocdrecovery.com. My name is Sam, And we also have all the other coaches here, Nick, Momin, Gemma, and Elliot. Have I forgotten anyone? And Rob. Please email Phil and get in touch, and we can book you in as soon as we possibly can. Guys, take care, and we will speak again. Bye-bye.